I'm so excited to introduce the concept of lighting, because in food photography, lighting is your power. If you learn to get your lighting right, everything else falls into place. And in this very important lesson, we're going to learn how to notice light. As we talked about in the last lesson, you have to train your mind to see like a camera, and the most important aspect of that is learning how to notice where the light's coming from and how it's affecting your scene through the photograph. We're also going to go on a journey around your home to find the best lit area that you can set up to take the best photos. We'll cover lighting angles to explain the difference between front lighting and back lighting and side lighting and multiple source lighting, and there is so much more that we're going to cover in this lesson. When I say that your light is your power, I absolutely mean it, because there is nothing that will affect the quality of your images more than lighting. All the other technical elements are built upon the foundation of good lighting. If you get lighting right, you can make all the other mistakes you want, to the point where almost all the pictures you see and you say, ooh, that doesn't look so good. I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of those pictures have bad lighting. So if you get your lighting right, it doesn't matter whether the food is styled incorrectly or whatever else is wrong with the picture. Good lighting covers up a lot of those mistakes, and it's really the element that separates the amateurs from the pros. Amateurs often use incandescent lights that are the wrong temperature and harsh shadows and other elements, whereas the pros know how to look at light. And one of the biggest elements of this is learning how to notice light. And when you learn how to notice light, it immediately improves the quality of your pictures. As I said, no matter what else is going on, if you set up your lighting correctly, the quality of the pictures you take will go up dramatically. Learning how to notice the light in terms of where it comes from and how it affects your scene will help you set up your scene much more efficiently. You don't have to take 50 pictures and say, something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. It's your light. So if you set up your light and know where it's coming from and have the mind to understand lighting, then your pictures look better almost automatically. And the cool part is that learning how to notice light really just comes down to understanding where it's coming from. That's the biggest element. If you know that the light's coming through this window and your scene's set up perpendicular, then you've got side lighting, and that side lighting is going to look different than back lighting. So let's look at our 4 primary lighting angles, because once we understand where it's coming from, the rest will be a lot easier to discuss. So what we're going to look at here is a picture of walnuts in a ramekin and spread around the scene. There's 4 different pictures, basically the same picture that's been rotated around in a well-lit room to give 4 different angles. So this first one, where's the light coming from? All you have to do is really look at the shadows on the walnuts in the front of the picture or the shadow of the ramekin to notice that the light is coming in the opposite direction. So if you said this picture is lit from the side, from the right, you would be correct. This one's a little different. Where's the light coming from in this picture? Again, follow the shadows. See which parts of the picture are bright and which parts cast shadows, and that'll tell you where the light's coming from. So if you said the light is coming from the front, you would be right. Is it starting to make a little more sense now? Try this third one yourself. This one's a little easier. You can see that the light is coming from the back of the scene. It's casting a bright reflection onto the surface, so it's coming from the back. So those are the first 3. We've got side lighting, front lighting, and back lighting. This 4th one is a little more tricky. What's happening here? What's happening here is that we can see there's definitely light coming from the right, but it's not so harsh. And the reason for that is because we do have right lighting, but we also have light coming in from the left. I have a reflector, which we'll talk about in a minute, that helps bounce some of the light back onto the scene so that the shadows are a little softer and there's a little bit more light present on the food in the pictures. So these are our 4 primary angles. You're either going to have light coming in from the side, from the front, from the back, or from multiple angles. And you can look at any picture and start to notice where the light's coming from, and that will help you so much in developing your skills as a photographer. Now what we've just talked about are the 4 basic angles and the 4 basic setups of light, but there's a few things you can do to manipulate this light, and we're going to go over those here. The first and my favorite technique is to scrape your light. A lot of photographers will talk about how backlighting is the most effective and widely used tool, but I love side lighting, where it's a really shallow, bright light coming from the side that scrapes over the top of your picture. Like if you notice in this picture here, it's very clear that the lighting is coming from the left and it's scraping across the top. It gives you the detail in the lentils and the sweet potatoes on top, and it highlights the basil that's sliced over the top, and it really adds a lot to the picture. So it comes in from the side and scrapes over the top. You want to use this to highlight something where there's a lot of texture on the surface of the item, because the scraped light will add even more texture to what's already there. It also adds a lot of drama and boldness, and I think it works really, really well for food photographs. I think they get more traction online, and I've seen this technique used over and over again with great results, which is why it's become my absolute favorite technique. I don't use it every time, it doesn't work for everything, but I do use it a lot, and I think it works really, really well. So it's something to think about as you're setting up your scenes. Another useful technique is to diffuse your light. If the light coming into your scene is too bright and too strong, I don't mean direct sunlight, we'll talk about that in a minute, but even just the bright indirect sunlight, if it's too bright, you can do something to diffuse it so that you get a lot of light, but so there's not as many shadows. So notice the difference. The picture on the left is undiffused, and you can see the harsh shadows coming off of the ramekin in the back and off of the walnuts in the front. But in the second picture, you're getting just as much light, but there's not as much contrast from light to dark. The picture isn't washed out in parts and really dark in others, and there's just not as many shadows. And this works really well if you have something like a clear glass dish where there would be bright, bold shadows reflecting off of the dish, and you want to get rid of those. So what do I actually mean by diffusing light, and how does this work? Let me show you exactly what the other side of this picture looks like. So this is kind of a hard picture to see just because there's so much contrast, but it shows you what's going on. This is actually in my garage, which we'll talk about in a minute, is my favorite place to shoot because there's a wall of light. The garage door is open, and in the first picture, there's nothing but light and light and light coming through. In the second picture, there's a white sheet hanging in between my scene and the source of the light. And the white sheet lets most of the brightness come through, but it cuts down on the shadows. And I basically just bought this at a fabric store. It's a very thin, kind of satiny white sheet, and you just hang it up over your window or in front of your scene, and it takes a minute to set up, but it's totally worth the effort to improve the quality of the photos. Now, I just talked about how I love shooting in my garage. And I learned that by going on a journey around my house and taking pictures in different areas. So for your homework in this lesson, to give you a heads up, you're going to set up a scene, maybe a flat surface and some food item like these cranberries, get your camera, and you're going to go to all the different potential locations in your house to take some pictures from each different setup to see where you get the best lighting. Now this first one is in my kitchen, and I actually do a lot of shooting in my kitchen and dining room area. There's some good windows, and at certain times of day, it does get really good lighting. So I would say half of my pictures are shot in my kitchen. Another picture here is of my garage, where there's very bright light, and I can manipulate it a lot better. Another is on my patio, which gets fairly decent lighting, but for practical reasons, it's kind of hard to shoot out there. And the final one is in my bedroom. And this picture actually doesn't even do justice to how bad it is. I actually had to boost the ISO on my camera, and the ISO is basically an element that allows you to take even brighter pictures than you should be able to take. So this picture was really bad, and I definitely want to avoid taking pictures in the bedroom area. So if you're looking at these, which one do you think would be the best place to shoot? And I know for me, it's definitely my garage. It gives me the most light, and this might be a little bit too bright, but again, I could use a diffuser if I want to. I could move the scene to a different angle and scrape the light from the other side or from the back. So it gives me the most flexibility and the most light to play with, which is the best scenario. Reflectors are basically an indispensable tool for a food photographer. They take the light and bounce it back in different angles. So you could have lighting coming in from the left side, and you put a reflector on the right side so that the shadows that would normally be on the right side are now gone. And that's what I did. If you notice in the first example about the 4 different angles, What I did was I had the light coming in from the right side, but I bounced it back from the left side so that it got rid of the shadows, gave more light to the scene, and allowed me to highlight certain aspects of the picture that I wanted to highlight. And a reflector is certainly something you want to have in your toolkit. Now, you can go out and you can buy $30 or $40 or $100 reflectors. They zip up and they have different colors and different temperatures. Or you can make one yourself for like $1. And let me show you how. What you want to do is you'll find a piece of sturdy cardboard that's at least 2 to 3 feet tall and maybe 1 to 1.5 feet wide. So just a big surface area. Then you'll take a piece of aluminum foil that's big enough to cover the cardboard, and you simply use glue to secure the foil onto the cardboard. And it looks super ghetto, but it absolutely works as good as the professional ones, and this is mine that I've been using for almost a year, and it works perfectly. So another heads up, you'll be making one of these in your homework lesson. Next, we need to talk about a few naughty subjects that we have to stay away from. And I really don't think I need to say much more than this. Artificial lighting is a terrible mistake. It changes the color temperature, it messes up your scenes, it casts these ugly shadows, and it looks awful just about every time. If you want a quick way to show people that you're an amateur photographer, use those incandescent light bulbs or the fluorescent light bulbs in your house to light your scenes, and they'll be sure to know real quick. Now, there are professional quality daylight lamps and flashes that you can use, but those are beyond the scope of this course. I don't even use those myself. I mostly just shoot in bright, natural sunlight. But that leads to another problem. When you shoot outdoors, it can be dangerous, because you definitely want to avoid direct sunlight. This is that same scene we've been going over again and again in this lesson, and this one's in direct sunlight. And you'll notice that there's just way too much contrast. The shadows are completely black, the highlights are completely white, everything is washed out, there's weird colors. It's just not a good picture. And every time you shoot in direct sunlight, you're going to get results like this. So it might seem like, oh, I want more light. Let me get more light by going out into the direct sun. No. You want to avoid that. So it's very dangerous to shoot in direct sunlight. If you're going to do that, make sure you shoot in the shade and you do it correctly. And this is one of the more recent pictures I did where I actually shot outdoors. I usually don't do that, but I went to the pool area, I made sure there was an umbrella, and I also brought a reflector, or the bounce card we just made, to block out the light or to bounce it back in the right angles. Because you do have a little less control outside. Sometimes there really is just too much light, and it can be hard. It's something I haven't played with too much. But these pictures came out pretty well, and it's got me more inspired to start shooting outdoors more, as long as you take the right precautions to control the light a little better. So, light. If you haven't gotten the picture by now, this is a topic that I'm really passionate about. And I'm passionate about it for good reason. Because learning how to control the light was the big aha moment for me in going from kind of taking okay to amateurish pictures to taking pictures that looked a lot better. Because light is ultimately what separates the amateurs from the professionals. If you follow the tips here and study more on your own and learn how to control the light better in your scenes, you'll go so much farther. And this is really just an introduction. I could do a whole course on lighting, and that might not be a bad idea because it's such an important topic. So we've already talked about a few of the homework assignments for this lesson. The first is to go on a light finding mission around your home, as we already talked about. This will help you find the best lighting in your house that you can use time and time again to get really good shots. So what you'll do is, if you can, take the surface with you. For now, you could just use like a towel or something that's a consistent color so that you can compare your shots. And then on top of this, you'll bring like a piece of fruit or one simple food item, and you'll take your camera and take a picture of this in one room with a certain kind of lighting. Then you'll move to another room or another area of your home, set up the same scene, the same angle, the same camera, and take the same shot. Do this 3 or 4 or 5 times in different areas of your house, maybe upload them to your computer, and then just compare the raw images to see which one looks best and to find the location where you can take the best pictures in your home. Second, I'd like you to set up one of those reflectors. You don't have to buy an expensive one. You can just build your own for a few dollars. So find a piece of cardboard, take a piece of aluminum foil, and then glue it onto the cardboard, and you'll be surprised at how much this can improve your shots. Finally, you need to get in the habit of learning to see the light in every photograph, whether it's one you're taking or one you're looking at. So start by looking at a lot of pictures, find maybe 50 or more on a site like Food Gawker, which we've already talked about, and just quickly, in the span of a few seconds, determine where the light is coming from. Notice the source and the angle of the light, how it's casting shadows, and how it's affecting the scene. So good luck with these homework assignments. I'm glad you made it through this monster lesson, and it really does get easier from here once you understand how to control the lighting in your scene.